Actually live. It says streaming live. I don't
I
know
think
how
so.
live we are.
I'm gonna double check.
Okay.
We're good.
We're good. Hey, good evening. Welcome to Crazy Cabin Fever Cocktails, episode 51. My name is Tim Middle with Distilled Living. We are produced by Fascination Design. We had a lot of events tonight. We had 6 virtual events tonight, so I am having a 2-ingredient cocktail. I'm doing a little highball because this is what I have the energy for tonight. We were had some conversations around grenadine, and I was actually thinking about doing a grenadine cocktail at one point. Grenadine is actually pomegranate. It's not cherry, and it should be pomegranate. It should be pomegranate reduced into a syrup, and it's really, really delicious. Rose's grenadine is not grenadine. It's totally artificial and fake, by the way. There's nothing real about it. This is San Pellegrino, dark morello cherry, and pomegranate. It's actually really, really tasty. It's just flavored mineral water, 0 calories, but it actually reflects the correct flavor profile, which I was looking for. And I've been having some conversations around bourbons with that kind of complementary flavor, and New Riff is totally in line with that. It's a big red fruit, juicy red fruit character. So I am just doing what is in effect for me a 2-ingredient highball, but it's going to have a nice, rich complexity of character without any added sugar, which is what I wanted for this evening. And I'm making mine pretty tall, which means I'm doing a lot of mixer on top of my bourbon. That's it. That's my simple cocktail. Fortunately, that's not all for you because we pre-recorded. Alex Morgan came into studio and did 2 smoked cocktails for you. Some really sophisticated advanced techniques. So pay attention to this one because this is a lot of really, really cool stuff going on. Cheers.
How's it going, everybody? My name's Alex Morgan. I'm here with Distilled Living. This is Crazy Cabin Fever Cocktails, presented by Fascination Designs. And today we're going to talk about the Old Fashioned. So a lot of you may know this is a classic cocktail. This goes back to the dates of Prohibition. A lot of different places you may go, you've seen it done a lot of different ways. One of my least favorite is the muddling of the fruit. I call that a fruit salad or an airport old fashioned, if you will. This is going to be a little bit simpler, yet more complex and more professional. This is really going to pull all the flavors into exactly what you want for the end result. So what's really important about this, the history of the old fashioned. This is a cocktail that dates even well beyond Prohibition in some people's stories, but I believe it really got its name from Prohibition in that era here in the United States. So, if all of you know, Prohibition happened pretty much all the way through the 20s into the early 30s, 19 that is, for all you youngsters out there. So, alcohol was banned in the entire United States, but it was still being drank and it was still being produced. And mostly you had to have a prescription from your doctor to get alcohol, and most of the time it was a whiskey. And for if you had a cold, anything like that. So whiskey in Kentucky here, we make it with corn and we call it bourbon, and we're very proud of that. But one of the really cool things is that we kind of ran out of that corn and we ran out of the bourbon, so we had to start using rye whiskey. Rye at the time was very spicy, very heavily flavored, and it was really hard to drink. So a lot of you may know that adding things like sugar and citrus juices and maybe even bitters in some occasions helped alleviate that really hard to drink rye whiskey. So today this is what I'm going to teach you. Right now I have, first off, we'll go through the tools of the trade. Here I have a bar spoon. I have a mixing glass. Now this mixing glass in particular is a little fancier than what you might have at your home bar, but a pint glass will work perfect for this as well. This is called a yare glass. It's a Japanese style mixing glass. And it's cylindrical with a pour spout. So and you'll see this when we actually get into the cocktail making itself, that the spoon just naturally flows through the glass, and it's really important if you do want to impress your friends at a cocktail party or your family. Go on Amazon or something and buy you a $15, $17 Yare mixing glass. We've got the bar spoon. This is swiveled. It's got a really nice, comfortable action for when you do stir the cocktail. These are at your local liquor store. You can buy all this equipment, honestly, wherever you are. We've got a rocks glass. This is actually called a double rocks glass. It's a larger version of your single rocks that you might sip on your whiskey neat with. And then this is called a Hawthorne strainer. It's got a coiled straining technique. Some they vary, but some of them even have this nice little notch for you to comfortably strain your cocktail with. This is a must in every bar, every home bar. You need to have these certain tools in order to come out with the right product. Another thing I have, a lot of you may use, we're going to use a little orange slice, a little rind of orange at the end of this. And I personally prefer where I get more meat of the skin of that orange with the rind. I like a paring knife, but you can use a peeler, whatever you have in your house. It's fine, just as long as you get the rind of the orange. You can see where I've already done one here. The rind of the orange contains all the oils that we're going to use for this cocktail. You don't really want the meat and the pulp of the orange because then you're going to be adding juice, which is what we're going to avoid. My old fashioned is very simple. There's 3 ingredients. There's your whiskey. There's your sweetener, which I have 1 to 1. This one is sugar in the raw, or like a demerara or a turbinado sugar, something organic. Cane sugar works perfectly. I wouldn't use bleached white sugar. It kind of comes out to be a little bit overpowering, and we're going to get to that. This is 1 to 1 with water and sugar. It's been sitting for about an hour. You don't even need to heat it up because you might begin to caramelize that sugar if you do. We've got bitters. I've got some options here. Today we're going to be using the Jack Rudy aromatic cocktail bitters for our old fashioned. You can switch any of these ingredients up. My biggest thing for you to take home today is that your cocktail is balanced. So with each one of these ingredients, there's 3 flavors here. I've got rye whiskey to offset the sweetness. I've got the bitters to kind of bring everything together. So as long as everything works together and you're creating balance, no matter if you have 7 or 10 ingredients in a cocktail, and I really hope you don't ever have to deal with that much, but as long as they all pull together and balance that end product out, you're going to have an amazing cocktail. So let's get started. I'm going to start out, and this is a great practice for any person that's ever been in the industry of bartending, or even if you're just doing your home bar. You never want to waste the expensive product, which is usually your spirit. So I'm going to start out with the simple syrup. We're going to use also another tool that you may need to have is a jigger or a small measuring cup that's graded like this, like it has all the different amounts that you can actually watch. I have a clear one at home. Any of these tools you can find in your grocery store. So I never put more than a 1/4 ounce of simple syrup in my old fashioned. You may go to a bar and they may use a full ounce. I just don't believe in over sweetening because people spent years and years of experience and knowledge in making the whiskey. You don't really want to ruin that by over sweetening it. That's just kind of a rule of thumb for me. So I'm going to start out with a 1/4 ounce of my 1 to 1 simple syrup. I'm going to go with a lot of these bitters. This one in particular has a dropper. I'm going to go with about a 1/2 dropper. Go ahead and fill that in there. All right, and one more very important rule when it comes to making a cocktail. Never have less than 2 ounces of booze in your cocktail. I feel like you're cheating the customer and cheating yourself if you do like 1.5 ounces. Some people even do an ounce cocktail, and that's just crap. That's not the way to do it. You've got to get 2 ounces, and whether that be certain cocktails may have 1.5 ounce of one spirit and a 1/2 ounce of another. As long as it equals out to be about 2 ounces. So we're going to pour that in there. And actually right now, folks, at home, when you're trying this, I want you to go ahead and smell it. Go ahead and taste a little bit of it. It's fantastic. That's really loosened up the spiciness of the rye. It's just sweet enough. And the bitters, like I said, really give it a well-rounded, kind of bring all the flavors together. Now, what we're going to do beyond that is add some ice, and we're going to work on that stir that we talked about with a little bit of dilution. So I don't have any ice scoop, but that's fine. You don't need a ton. You just need enough to make it work. So a little bit of ice here, and really with this type of spoon, you want to keep the back of that spoon around the cylindrical Yare mixing glass. And that suggests about 15 to 20 seconds of a nice, swift, steady stir. You don't want to be splashing around. You can hear where it's like, you go to some bars and they're doing this. It really just needs to be a nice, calm, smooth, steady stir. Sorry. Again, about 15 to 20 seconds. You can actually see the dilution happening as it happens. It's a beautiful thing. I think we're right where we need to be. We'll set that aside. Another thing that's very important, and if you don't have this at home, that's fine. You can do this with regular ice cubes out of your freezer. But I highly suggest that you come up with an ice cube mold. These are beautiful. It melts slowly, and it allows your cocktail to maintain its complexity throughout the melting process. Because we're not chugging this one down. We're going to have this over a cigar. We're going to have it sitting by a fire, an after-dinner drink, a dessert, if you will. And it's very important that it stays and maintains all of the complexity and the flavor that we've worked on so far with these 3 simple ingredients. They maintain with that larger ice cube. And just look at that beautiful, beautiful caramel golden color. Oh gosh. So we're going to take it a step farther. I'm going to take this orange and we'll make this quick. And I want you to make sure you're careful when you do this at home. I want to get as much of the meat as possible, but not cut into the pulp of the fruit. That's very important. And we're going to do something called sweating the orange. I'm a cigar guy myself, so I have these torches sitting around. One thing you got to make sure if you're going to do this at home, safety first. Never shoot the fire down in the glass because you're working with sometimes alcohol that may catch on fire. Also, you don't want to shoot it up towards yourself for obvious reasons. This burns at about 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit, and you will burn your finger so bad that you won't feel it, like myself, for a few years after. So I always practice directly over the glass, just like this. But first, we're going to sweat the orange. You know, orange is a porous fruit, and it has oils in the rind. And it may look dry until you actually sweat the orange. So what's happening here is those pores are closing up. They're sending all that oil, which is flammable, and you see that happening now, out to the surface. And it's going to look like it's wet on the surface now. So what I'm going to do is have my fire right over the tip of the glass. And I'm actually going to express the orange directly over the fire into the glass, just like so. And all that oil just charred and shot in there. And just for good measure, I like to rub around the edge because most of your palate is actually through your nose. And every time you grab this glass, smell it, and they can smell it in the room with me right now. And no one is even closer than 8 feet away. It is an amazing aroma. And it's really going to set the tone for what you're about to taste with this old fashioned. Cheers. All right, so we've learned a little bit about the classic old fashioned and my interpretation of it, which is very simple, yet it can be very complex. And so as you're enjoying that, you're going to notice some of the flavors that are happening. And you might even get some smokiness, some tobacco. And so we're really going to learn how now to go to the next level and do an old fashioned that I've actually won multiple competitions with in the cocktail world, and this is called the rolled smoke. This technique is very interesting. I'm sure if you've ever been to a cocktail lounge that smoked a cocktail, they probably just say, "This is the glass you're drinking out of." They probably just smoked that glass. We're gonna do a little bit something different here. We're gonna change it up where again we're retouching on the fact that most of your palate comes from what you smell. And so if you smoke the glass, the surface area of that entire glass on the inside, and sometimes even on the outside, if you ever see a smoking box, everything you touch, every part of the glass is gonna be smoky. I'm gonna avoid that. And it's not gonna be the first thing you taste and smell. This cocktail incorporates an infusion of smoke into the actual liquid, into the actual cocktail itself. And so when you taste this, it's going to be the last thing. It's going to be on the finish. So today I'm going to be using cherry wood. I suggest, I put a little bit too much on there. I suggest a small amount of just your typical cooking barbecue type cherry wood. I love using peach wood. Apple wood is wonderful. Things I would avoid would be mesquite, hickory, your big time heavy barbecue type smokes, because again, I want to touch on balance. The most important aspect of any cocktail is if one flavor overpowers everything else, then we've ruined the cocktail. So those mesquite and hickory and those heavy flavors, when it comes to the smoking wood, actually overpower the cocktail to the point you can even use cigar tobacco. I would use it very sparingly, not as much as this. Maybe even a mixture of different woods, or maybe some cigar tobacco with the wood. You really don't want to overdo it. So we're going to use the same exact recipe, 2 ounces. I'm going Rittenhouse rye. This is Olive and Bond. I love it. It's a great go-to. It's going to add some spice to the cocktail. We're gonna go 2 ounces. I might empty this bottle out. Still Living needs to replace the Rittenhouse rye after tonight. So this technique involves the cocktail shaker as well. This is a new tool to be introduced. Probably one of the most recognizable tools in the bartending world. So I'm gonna go against my rule because I'm not gonna screw this one up. I usually do start with the bitters and the sweetener, and then the booze last. But we're just gonna roll through this. Again, a 1/4 ounce of your simple syrup. You really don't want to oversweeten this one. If you do, it's going to become a very, very rich, overpowering type of sweet because the smoke is going to accentuate that. I'm going to switch the bitters up this time just to show you that they're interchangeable. I'm going to use the Fee Brothers Aztec chocolate bitters this time. And what it's going to do is actually enrich some of the spicy flavors that are in this rye. You can use whatever bitters you want. Again, there's some that may overpower the flavor and what's happening on the mouthfeel of the cocktail. That's up to you. So a couple healthy little dashes in there. This one doesn't have that dropper that we had the convenience of with the Jack Rudy's, but it works just fine. And then for this one, I'm going to go ahead. We're going to need some extra dilution. I'm using an ice spear this time. A large ice cube will work just fine. That one dropped a little heavy in there. So we're going to go ahead and get that diluting while we do this, because ultimately it's going to have to fit in this snifter glass that we have. So I'm going to go ahead and get some good char on this wood. You really want to hit all edges of it. I made one of these cocktails that was called the Commonwealth Campfire. And that was at the 1792 competition a few years ago. And I called it that. I named it that because this actually looks like a miniature campfire. And again, you really don't want to do this on a countertop or anything for obvious reasons. This is a tiny little piece of burn board. You can even use a piece of cedar, like a cedar salmon plank. Those work. Or use a barrel stave if it's wide enough to fit your glass. We're going to take, this is about good enough. We got a good char all the way around the wood. I'm going to take a pint glass. We're just going to let that fire go out. And the key to most of these cocktails is patience and making sure that you get it done the right way. And if you screw it up, toss it, start over. This is very important. You see how thick all that smoke filled into there? This is a really fun little, I'll try and do this as quickly and safely as possible. You don't want to pick it up and lift it because you're going to lose all that smoke. This smoke inside the glass is exactly what's going to bring all the flavor. So you just want to set it over real gently. And now most of these cocktail shakers you've usually seen used like this. They're really shaking it up. They're agitating everything inside. And it's not something we're doing today. This is called the rolled smoke for this reason. We're literally just going to roll it gently with that ice. All of these wonderful ingredients in here are infusing together right now. It's like a pot of chili overnight happening in your hands in about 20 seconds. This is such a cool technique. You ever do a cocktail party? This is really fun to show off your skills. And it's not that difficult to do, guys. It's really not. So we're just rolling it around. I really want, again, just like we stirred the old fashioned, I'm going to do about 15 to 20 seconds. Make sure you really get it mixed up. And also, you're not just doing it linear like this. I'm going back and forth, really mixing it all up. Now, this technique, I'm going to move this aside. I'm going to use this snifter glass. This is called a clamshell. You want to pop that loose a little bit. Instead of using a strainer, you really want to focus on the glass right now. When smoke gets cold, it falls down instead of rising. So we're going to pour that smoke into the glass as the cocktail itself starts dripping down in the glass. And if you've done it right, and you've got enough dilution, that sphere is small enough now to drop right on top. And you pour the rest of the smoke into the glass. And ladies and gentlemen, I give you the rolled smoke. Cheers. Fantastic.
And that is a contrast in technique. My little 2-ingredient highball and 2 smoked cocktails, and especially that rolled smoke there at the end, which is even cooler in person when we're all getting back together. I got to try to get Alex to do that for in some way. We'll see what we can do, because that is really, really freaking cool technique. And he makes it look simple, but it's simple the way he does it. And it's awesome. And here's Hillary. So you need to close this out?
I guess so, except I do have to walk back over there because I didn't get a keyboard, and we apparently have milk crates under the table.
We
So
do.
hi. As always, we'll be back again next week.
No.
Oh, it's Thanksgiving week, so we're
Yeah.
taking a week off. Not really a full week off, but
Taking off Wednesday night.
Crazy Cabin Fever is not going to happen next week, but we will be back the week after that. Do you know what day that is?
No idea.
I don't either. It's December 2nd.
First Wednesday in
or
December.
something. So
It's the 2nd, because the 3rd is a Thursday, and we have way more bookings than we can handle on that day. So there you go. Cheers, everybody. Good night.